From Womb to Womb. Metamorphosis of a Mother by Francis Story is an intricate examination of the Buddhist concept of rebirth and the metaphysical journey of an individual across multiple lives. It primarily investigates the process of death and rebirth through the lens of Buddhist philosophy, specifically the Theravada tradition, supported by case studies and scientific research that explores the phenomena of reincarnation. This work dives deeply into the transformative journey of the soul or non-soul as per Buddhist doctrine, discussing the survival of karmic elements beyond physical death and their manifestation in successive existences. A central tenet of this book is the Buddhist concept of anatta, or non-self, which contrasts with many other religious views on reincarnation that propose the existence of an eternal soul or spirit. In the traditional view of reincarnation found in Hinduism and some Western philosophies, it is believed that a stable, eternal soul transmigrates from one life to another, only the body being subject to the laws of impermanence. This soul carries its essential identity, knowledge, and experiences across different lifetimes. This view of reincarnation implies a continuity of the self despite the physical changes that occur through each incarnation. However, in Theravada Buddhism, this notion of an eternal soul is rejected. Instead, the Buddhist teaching emphasizes that all aspects of a person, both body and mind, are impermanent. Feelings, consciousness, thoughts, and even knowledge do not remain constant. They are subject to arising and passing away, much like the body itself. This means that there is no unchanging entity, such as a soul, that transmigrates after death. Instead, rebirth is explained through the doctrine of dependent origination, Paticca Samuppada, where one life gives rise to another through the transmission of kama or karma, the force of one's actions that conditions the nature of their next existence. Francis Story uses the metaphor of a billiard ball to explain the transmission of energy from one life to the next. When one billiard ball strikes another, the first ball comes to a stop, but its energy is passed on to the second ball, which starts to move. Similarly, in the process of rebirth, there is no entity that moves from one life to the next. Instead, the energy or karmic force of one life passes on to condition the next. This continuous process happens rapidly and seamlessly, so much so that we usually only see the outcomes rather than the individual moments of transition. Story emphasizes the idea that rebirth, in the Buddhist sense, involves the transmission of karmic energy rather than the transfer of a permanent soul. This process is further illustrated by the dialogue between King Milinda and Arahant Nagasena, where Nagasena uses the example of milk turning into curds, butter, and eventually ghee. While ghee, butter, and curds come from milk, they are not the same as milk, nor are they completely separate from it. In the same way, the individual who is reborn is neither the same person nor a completely different person from their past life. This nuanced view of identity is critical in understanding the Buddhist perspective on rebirth. While Buddhist doctrine offers a theoretical understanding of rebirth, Francis Story also highlights the importance of empirical investigation into this phenomenon. One of the key figures in the scientific exploration of rebirth is Professor Ian Stevenson of the University of Virginia, who collected over 600 cases of reincarnation from different parts of the world. His research into children who claim to remember past lives provides significant evidence for the theory of rebirth, even in cultures that do not traditionally believe in it. The wide geographical distribution of these cases, ranging from Asia to North America, suggests that rebirth is not simply a culturally conditioned belief, but may have objective reality. One of the most compelling cases discussed in the book is the story of Winwin Nyunt, a Burmese girl who vividly recalled two previous lives, that of her paternal grandmother Dao Yu Shui and her older brother Maung Maung Lei, who died tragically young. This case is particularly remarkable because of the physical and psychological evidence linking Winwin Nyunt to her previous incarnations. For example, Winwin was born with a birthmark on her left ankle that corresponded to the site where her brother had received a blood transfusion just before his death. Additionally, Winwin displayed an unusual knowledge of people and events from her grandmother's life that she could not have possibly learned in her current life. The story of Winwin Nyunt begins with a series of vivid dreams experienced by her father, U Kin Nyunt, who was a military administrator in Upper Burma. While he was separated from his mother due to political unrest, he dreamed that she was ill and longing to see him. In another dream, he saw her lying dead, fully dressed for cremation, in clothes he had never seen before. When he finally returned home, he discovered that his mother had indeed passed away, and she had been dressed in the exact clothing he had seen in his dream. Shortly after her death, U Kin Nyunt's wife Dao Mu Mu became pregnant, and their son Maung Maung Lei was born. However, the child's life was short and filled with illness. Despite medical treatment, Maung Maung Lei passed away at the age of 3. U Kin Nyunt and his wife were devastated, but their grief was compounded by a series of strange dreams and experiences. A monk they consulted even predicted that their child was only a visitor and would not stay with them for long. 3 years later, Dao Mu Mu gave birth to a daughter, Win Win Nyunt, and it became evident that she was not an ordinary child. From a very young age, Win Win began to speak of her past lives, claiming that she was both Maung Maung Lei and Dao Yu Shui reborn. She exhibited detailed knowledge of her grandmother's life and habits, as well as memories of her brother's short life. Her family became convinced of the authenticity of her claims, especially when she referred to her father as son, a reversal of the usual parent-child relationship in Burmese culture. What makes Win Win Nyunt's case particularly striking is the presence of physical evidence in the form of birthmarks. In addition to the mark on her ankle from her brother's blood transfusion, Win Win also had a birthmark on her buttock, which corresponded to a mark made by a family driver on Maung Maung Lei's body after his death. This level of detail adds credibility to the claim that birthmarks can sometimes serve as indicators of past life connections. One of the most challenging aspects of rebirth is the question of personal identity. How can the same person exist across different lifetimes if neither the body nor the mind remains constant? In Buddhism, personality is not seen as a fixed entity, but rather as an ever-changing process influenced by karmic actions. This view challenges the conventional understanding of identity, which is often tied to the continuity of memory and consciousness. Francis' story emphasizes that while physical and mental attributes may change from one life to the next, certain traits or tendencies can persist across lifetimes. For example, a person who develops a strong aptitude for music in one life may carry that talent into their next life, much like how a child prodigy may exhibit skills beyond their years. These continuities are not due to an unchanging soul, but rather the result of karmic imprints that shape the new personality. The case of Win Win Nyunt provides a vivid illustration of how personality traits can persist across lives, even when the physical body and circumstances are different. Win Win's strong identification with both her grandmother and her brother suggests that certain emotional attachments and karmic connections can transcend death, reappearing in subsequent lives. The Buddhist view of personality is fundamentally different from Western notions of the self. In Buddhism, personality is seen as a temporary and illusory construct, composed of 5 aggregates: form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, that are in constant flux. At death, these aggregates dissolve, and a new set of aggregates arises in the next life, conditioned by the karmic actions of the previous life. In the case of rebirth, what survives is not the personality as we understand it in a conventional sense, but rather the karmic momentum generated by previous actions. This karmic force conditions the new personality that emerges in the next life. In some cases, such as Win Win Nyunt's, memories of past lives may surface, but these are not the result of an enduring soul. Rather, they are like traces left behind by past experiences, re-emerging under certain conditions. The book also explores the phenomenon of sex change between lives, as in the case of Dao Yu Shui, who was reborn first as a boy, Maung Maung Lei, and later as a girl, Win Win Nyunt. Stories suggest that Dao Yu Shui's strong maternal attachment to her son may have caused her to manifest in a body that was initially male but was not suited to her karmic tendencies, leading to an early death and subsequent rebirth as a female. This theory reflects the flexibility of karmic forces which can influence the sex, circumstances, and traits of the individual reborn.